Hi, I'm Laura Nelkin, and I have been loving working turned hems on sweater designs this year. In the spring, I discovered that I could use my stitch saver for working a turned hem, and I want to show you how easy that is to do. If you don't have a stitch saver, which is a hollow silicone tube, you can also do this technique on a spare cable needle or a spare circular needle or any other spare needle that you have, but I find the stitch savers to be absolutely the perfect tool for this. So the clip I'm about to show you, we shot when I was doing the Solar Tee and Solar Tank knit along. So here you go. So the first thing that you'll do is you'll take your working yarn, not scrap yarn, and you will make a slip knot. And then you're gonna take that slip knot and put it onto the stitch saver or extra cable that you're working on. So I've got that slip knot kind of held on there. That is not going to count as a stitch, so we'll be getting rid of that extra slip knot later. It's just on there for now. And now what you're gonna do is take your smaller needle and you're gonna go underneath your working yarn, and that counts as one stitch on the needle. And then you're gonna go in front of the cord and underneath it and grab your yarn and pull it up. And now you have 2 stitches on the needle, but what you're doing at the same time is making stitches on the cord. And then I'm gonna go over the needle and then I'm gonna reach underneath it. And you're gonna continue doing this until you have the number of stitches on your top needle that is called for. So if you're making the smallest size and the pattern says to cast on 56 stitches, you want to have 56 stitches on your top needle. You always end with a stitch that is reaching underneath the cord and grabbing the yarn. So once you've got your stitches on your needle for the size you're making, you're going to turn your work. And here's the biggest thing. If you work this technique, you're skipping that first setup row, which is a purl row written in the pattern, and starting right away with work stockinette stitch for 5 rows. So if you're doing that, you would just start working across with a knit row and you'd work 5 rows in stockinette stitch. So that would be a knit row, a purl row, a knit row, a purl row, and a knit row, right? I think that was 5 that I just said. So you're just going to continue across like that. Now, because I think that you would get bored if you watched me work stockinette stitch for 5 rows, I have another little step out on my needles here. I always feel like this is where I'm at baking show and I'm like, and here's the cake already done out of the oven. So here we go with, I'm on the 5th row right here and I'm working across. So I'm just finishing up that row. And now I am at that point on the pattern where it says turning row. And I'm gonna turn my work and then I'm going to knit 1 row, and this knit row is happening on the wrong side of your work. And now when I get to the end of this row, I am going to switch to my larger needle, and that is the needle that you got gauge with. And I'm gonna go ahead and switch to that needle, and I'm gonna work 6 rows in stockinette stitch. So that means I'm gonna knit 1 row, purl 1 row, 3 times total. And what that's gonna look like when you're done with that is, ta-da! Another little one ready to go. And I have got my rows down here worked with the smaller needle. Sorry, let me get that centered. The rows down here worked with the smaller needle, and the rows up here worked with the bigger needle. And now this is where the stitch saver is absolutely magical. I'm gonna go ahead and take that stitch saver, grab my smaller needle. I can just take this hollow silicone cord, put it into the end of my needle, slide that needle onto all of those stitches, and now I am ready to work. What I want to show you right here is, remember I said that that slip knot we made at the beginning is not a stitch. This is the point when I take this off that I'm just going to slide that stitch saver off, because that
can go away right there. And now what we're going to do is work the joining row. And we're gonna fold this up so that the stitches on the smaller needle, which are your provisionally cast on stitches, are to the back, and your stitches on the bigger needle are to the front. And then you are gonna grab one more bigger needle and go through the front stitch and then through the back stitch. Now what's interesting here, and I'm hoping you can see it, is when we worked that cast on onto the cable, every other stitch is twisted. So right now I've kind of got the left leg to the front of the needle and the right leg to the back. So that back stitch, I'm gonna work through the right leg right there. And I'm gonna wrap the yarn around and I'm just gonna pull it through that back needle stitch and through that front needle stitch, and then slide both of those stitches off of the needle. And now I'm gonna continue across. Let me just line things up so it's looking pretty. Doing that front needle, back needle, pulling the yarn through. Front needle, back needle, but I'm going through the right leg and pulling the yarn through. Front needle, back needle, pulling the yarn through. Front needle, back needle, pulling the yarn through. And that is my joining row, working that all the way across. Isn't that stitch saver amazing? It makes it so easy to do this stitch. Now, if you had worked on a spare needle, you wouldn't need to do that step because you'd already have those stitches on a needle. But it's another great way to do a provisional cast on without the fussiness of having to unzip that crochet cast on. So working all the way across, and you've got your joining row. I'm just gonna work it for you because it's so fun. There you have it. There is your folded hem. What I really like about a folded hem, particularly with lightweight fabric like this, is it creates something that's a little bit more dense and heavy at the bottom of your sweater. So your sweater isn't going to roll up as much or kind of start to lose shape and drape. It's gonna really kind of maintain its structure, which is really nice. What I do have on the needles, because I got really into making step outs for you guys this time, is what it would look like if you worked that turned hem with the provisional cast on. So here you've got the provisional cast on with scrap yarn, the 5 rows that are worked in stockinette stitch with the smaller needle, the turning row, and then the 6 rows with the bigger needle. And now in this case, before you went to work that turning row, you would unzip this provisional cast on, put all of those stitches onto a needle, and then fold it up and work across just like we did, just like the way I just showed you. So that is the other way to work the provisional cast on or the turned hem that is written in the pattern. Definitely let me know if you have any questions. Isn't that a fun way to do a turned hem? I use this technique on Solar Tee, Solar Tank, and Bling Tank, and I'm sure that I'll be using it in the future. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any. I'd love if you subscribe to my channel and hit the thumbs up button on this video. That helps me a ton. Happy knitting.